Okay, I've been really excited to make this video. I'll try to keep the camera from shaking, no promises. But I got a lot to unpack and I just wanted to get into it. So let's see, you might be experiencing something similar to what I've been experiencing. I am stepping into this new world, this new perspective and way of thinking where I can finally let go more and more of what the ego has been after. So I can proudly uh, embody the energy of being just being in my infancy, or just a child in my learning, that I don't know anything, and this is going to allow a lot of frequency to come in, a lot of energy exchange for the information that is most potent along my own personal story. And so that involves bringing more coherency to the game, to the Watcher's Alchemy. And so what I'm doing, what I set out to do in my infancy of my understanding of the greater order of things in the universe, is I lined up a set of books, 11 books. Now, some of them are gold, solid gold, but some of them I had hoped for a little bit more, but I know I'll get something out of them. So being in agreement, being in resonance, and being devoted to that energy exchange, if you get what I'm saying, involved in all of these works, these 11 books, for starters. And then there are some more books coming, but I wanted to unpack some of these. Another reason why I got them is because when I'm out there working, I just want to stay off my phone. I'm already using my phone for work, so um, there are times when I have to sit there, and yes, I meditate a lot. I meditate a lot because I have to sit there, but waiting for my delivery offers to come in. But I would also really love something to read that is not a piece of technology in my hand. I'd rather a book in my hand. And so I took my time, I researched some books and some authors, and I'm just really excited to dive into all these. I have already started reading pretty much all of them, most of them, up to the preface and the introductions. So I know what they're about, but ultimately I got them for their own specific reasons and their own grouped categories. So let me get into this real quick. This is in no particular order, except for the fact that the first ones are going to be the light reads, the ones I'll be reading at work, and all the ones at the bottom are the main texts that I'll be studying for years, and the real gold of the knowledge. So, start in no particular order: The Art and Practice of Astral Projection by Ophiel. Now, I read about briefly about the author. Most of the authors, I think, or at least a good majority of the authors in the stack, have all experienced serious hardships and in real dramatic, extensive moments in their life that a lot of us don't have to deal with in the collective. Me personally, I can relate with anyone who's gone through some serious hardships when they describe that a person has had to let go of their entire life, only to realize certain greater truths. Those are the authors I relate with most. So the art and practice of astral projection is pretty much just that. It's a very basic introduction to the greater art of leaving the body safely, and then what kind of things you interact with as you do that. So this sort of practice is actually in a lot of these texts that I'll get to in a moment. The 1-Year Manual by Dr. Israel Regardie, 12 Steps to Spiritual Enlightenment. This one came highly recommended. It was reasonably priced, and can fit in your pocket pretty much. And it's a nice 1-year challenge by the author himself. If you don't know who Israel Regardie is, we'll get to that in a moment. but the 1 year manual is supposed to take a person on a 1 year course, preferably 1 year. I think he mentions like preferably 4 years. Um, and excuse me. Oh man, let me get this all about. Where they can go from certain steps, uh, from spiritual awakening to spiritual enlightenment, or something about that. Something like that. It should be an easy read. John Gribben's book, In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, Quantum Physics and Reality, which explains pretty much to the layman uh, the theory behind quantum mechanics, where it's come from, what the idea behind the experiment of Schrodinger's cat, just kind of like an overlay of it is, if you're not familiar, the the theory the theory of Schrodinger's cat is a bunch of physicists or whatever, a bunch of quantum physicists standing over a theoretical project where you put a cat in a space where an automatic mechanism that decays away will either kill the cat or not kill the cat, because there's a 50-50 chance that this operative process will engage and kill the cat. And then when this is in a contained space where you cannot observe the cat, hence why it's theory, or why it's all numbers, dictates in short terms that there is no actual reality, because it depends on the observed. It has to be observed. So if you don't observe it, reality doesn't exist. Now that just kind of sounds kind of bunky, but other than that, kind of bunky and funky. But obviously, a lot of this book was written back in the 80s. Quantum mechanics, in its infancy, originated back in the 1920s, I believe, and so that's also part of what I'm researching, is the timeline in which all this information started coming about, because in this day and age, and having to do with the next book I'm going to refer to, we have to understand that we are working spirituality through a quantum mind, which is different than any other mind frame we have ever tried to comprehend. There was the ancient mind frame, there was the revolutionary mind frame, just kind of generally speaking, and then today we have the very progressive, very confused quantum mind frame, where we're starting to understand why things don't really make sense, and why we're all on these journeys of spirituality, and what that has to do with our modern day thinking, where it's going. The Game Changers, Social Alchemists in the 21st Century by Dr. Teresa Bullard. Apparently this is the special second edition. It's a pretty thin book. This I'm going to categorize as kind of like an introduction book. I watched an interview with her, and I felt a deep resonance, and when you get that feeling with somebody, regardless of who they are, that they're familiar in some way, that is actually very, very key. And I want to research into that a little bit more. But that doesn't have anything to do with this. This is talking about how we as a collective are moving forward in this quantum mind frame, towards a social alchemy, trying to come back together. Well, I believe it's trying to explain what we're doing, coming back together in this knowledge that we seem to have overlooked in history. And that is sort of kind of like the premise of what I'm starting to write about, which we'll get to. But yeah, I felt a deep resonance, and I was like, oh, that's great. I want to hear more about what she has to say. I purchased the book. It wasn't that expensive, I suppose. And I am slightly disappointed on how thin it is. That I don't. It's just my thing. It's my personal thing. It has nothing to do with the author. It's just I like. It doesn't feel good to me when I can finish a book in a sitting. I feel like I like to meditate on parts of it that I read, not the whole thing. And if I am sort of forced to meditate on a book from beginning to end, and it sort of is conclusive in the end, and I can sort of meditate on it in like 5-10 minutes, or maybe I don't feel the need to do it at all. I'm not getting enough out of it. So I prefer huge texts. So in the past, I've read whole books, like the Bible or Dianetics, and other more technical references to construction background, what have you. Next book, High Magic by Damien Echols, which apparently, I don't even know how, I never heard of this book before, but I think he wrote it in 2018, or it was published in 2018. Damien Echols was put away for 18 years for wrongful conviction of murder. Like they wrongfully convicted him. He eventually got out, and he credits to getting out. He credits getting out to what he learned in magic and mysticism, and how that saved his life on death row. And he's worked with a lot of people, including Johnny Depp and Eddie Vedder, and a lot of other, and he's even had like HBO specials, and I don't know, maybe even some documentaries. And he's written a few books. Very admirable. I got this book pretty much because I wanted a viewpoint from someone who's had to use magic or turn to magic in extremes. And Damien Echols is someone I would describe as someone who does have the new generation's mind frame of looking at things, the quantum mind frame, the understanding of the alchemical process in growth and in spiritual awareness, and rising up through the ranks. And that is exactly what I feel I'll be getting out of this, is a perspective on the extremes of using magic, and the perspective. I'm not looking for any of these books to save my life, but more or less to gain an understanding of the energies, because that's what people are. They're like magical spells. They're like wonderful, deep-rooted magical spells. And when you learn a person's story, they reveal something. They should reveal something to everybody. But like all knowledge, you are not privy to the doorway to reaching this knowledge unless you're ready to receive. And in this case, I am ready to receive the value of high magic in one's life, by the author Damien Echols. Now this was one of the last picks that I made, The Waters of Mnemosyne, and this was like a personal preference to my later research into my own personal magic, having to do with relating to gods, and then also planetary magic, which we're going to get to in a second. But this is by Gwendolyn Reese, and I haven't even read the outside and the preface yet, but I do understand that it will have specific information tied to the specific rituals and the angle I'm trying to go in, the personal resonance I'm trying to reach in my own quantum growth. And so we refer to ancient mysticism and magic on this channel as an understanding that this is a point that we missed in the past, and I'm going to get to that. But we are bringing it forward into the future with an understanding that this isn't fake. This is, it's funny because when you look at the two different worlds, I'll just real quick. When you look at the two different worlds of spiritual growth, there is the old and established world of esotericism, and all these authors and all these speakers have many followers. But when you turn to the world of the spiritual awakening side and the alchemy side, or just modern day alchemy, what you kind of get is a lot of veering around information, and not just plain and simply saying, hey, this one thing you're missing is that now that you are more aware and you feel that you have psychic powers and whatnot, that's or you feel that you're coming to life with your own religion, let's just say that, or your own God and your monotheistic principles, there is actually something that you might actually be missing, a great discipline and practice, and that is magic, because that is relative. And so in your awakening, you're supposed to restructure how these things have been um, adhered to the human psyche and the collective. And I hope that's understandable. But that's the whole point of reading all these books, and is to get a more structured, direct perspective of the record keepers, so to speak. And so by Denning and Phillips, we have an older text. I can't remember when it was written, but this is a more an older reference, something that modern day magicians refer to, and that is the Magical Philosophy, Book 4, Planetary Magic. Just like the previous book that talks about working with gods, this one talks about working with the planet energies, and how that and it kind of talks about how what's relevant and what's not, uh, in the misconceptions of what it means to know about planets, study planets, and what is to work with the energies of planets. So that's going to come in handy, and this starts getting into the main text, along with the Waters of Nemesis. Start getting into and Damien Echo's book starts getting into the main text of things that I can refer to years and years from now, and they aren't just reads. To spend time with, or to pass the time with. Next is another Israel regarded book, very highly recommended and cherished, The Tree of Life, an illustrated study in magic by Israel Regardie, edited and annotated by Chick Cicero and Sandra Tabitha Cicero. So this is an older book. This one was written before the Golden Dawn, his main text, but it is kind of like an all-in-one study. And just real quick, hang on a second. Let me just show you. Let me just show you real quick. Look at this. Look at this, and in almost good enough to fit in your pocket. Have that walking around with you. If you study the Kabbalah, if you study the Tree of Life, if you study magic, or even if this is like your first time you've ever hearing about it, the feeling you will get eventually when you realize what your path consists of, or the opportunities your path can consist of, and then you realize when you hold these illustrations and you hold these works in your hand, the feeling is just it's transformative, and to eventually know that what you're learning is just a vast, ancient, interesting piece of knowledge. And these 11 books is just kind of breaking the surface. There are many, many, many more books that I would love to own. Who knows if I'll ever have the space for them? But I do have to add before I move on to the main text, is doing this, the awakened mind will observe that it isn't just about buying books from pride and wanting to just covet the knowledge or covet the physical book and say that I have it. When you understand the deeper workings of spiritual growth, you start reaching out to higher powers and working with natural forces, which all these texts talk about. Working with natural forces in harmony that bring kind of this energy exchange where there is, I know, kind of hear me out. I know what I want, and I know what I'm going for, and I know what the sacrifice or sacrament is to attain the knowledge. And this is what I'm willing to do, and I extend myself to those limits, or lack of limits. And so this natural process reaches out back to you, and in exchange puts you through tests. And so there was this state of mind where I was so excited to receive this, and then after waiting, very stressed out energies came in. I had to stand there and sit there and acknowledge and meditate, and then it manifested into physical reality where I learned a lesson and I passed through thresholds where I had some very interesting and emotional conversations. I'm not going to get into it, but it kind of proved to the awakened mind that, wow, this is an organic, intuitive process of the universe. And then after that is when I completed in receiving the books and understanding the expression I needed to put out, or the creative art I needed to put out, which I'll get to, in order to have it realized. So it's a process of understanding and emotion going into it, reaching out, forces coming back and saying, "Oh, if you're ready for it, here, let's just see if you're ready for it." And if you asked us, so you're ready to receive, here you go, boom. It came with some stress points, it came with some needs to meditate. It took some days or a week to process this whole information. There was a blow up, and it revolves around the Scorpio moon, perfect timing and synchronicity. Then there was harmony that came from the explosion and blossoming of these ashes and this decay feeling, metaphorically speaking, to see something that oh my gosh, there's something actually there, and it's relative to my story. And thank you, universe, thank you, whatever forces you're working with, whatever forces I'm working with, thank you. I am in harmony with you. I get the point. Let me write this all down. Let me go forward and express and use this harmony, use this newfound correspondence of resonance to create. Now I'm creating. Okay, that was kind of long, but I think you get what I'm talking about. But this is the process. I don't really know anything, but because I am willing to take these steps, correspondence comes into play, and the fruit is handed back and forth. Anyways, the next book by a guy I admire. His name is Liam Thomas Christopher. He has a YouTube channel. His name, Liam Christopher's channel, and his book is Kabbalah Magic, and the great work of self-transformation, a complete course. Again, this kind of gets into the fact that I'm taking this seriously. I'm a student, and that's what I love about Liam's emphasis. Is it is on the student emphasis and locking you into that feeling you carry with you, that sense of completion you carry with you into the higher initiate and adept stages of magic or understanding oneself in this universe, is to always understand that you are a student. And this requires discipline. It requires a serious approach, also with the dynamic of play and stillness. He's just a very sound person. You can tell he really knows his stuff, and I've been happy to learn from him. I discovered him when he had like 1,000 followers, and now he's got like a whole lot more. Back in 2023, I believe. It was meant to be. I resonated with his work and swore up and down I would eventually buy his book, and so I am keeping to that promise. This book, he recommended a lot of some of these books. Excuse me, not all of them, but some of them. He recommended some of them, and of course I was very happy to buy his book. And this study is based on the main text by Israel Regardie, this next book, which is his magnum opus, The Golden Dawn, the big black brick. So I'm going to put this down, but this is the main text. Everybody should be familiar with The Golden Dawn. It is a staple. It's got everything in it, and it emphasizes a lot of these special, unique points highlighted in a lot of these other books that I'm starting with. Like I said, there's a lot more. There's many more books I want to get, many and some real key books that I wish I would have gotten instead of some of these others to start with. But I see why I wouldn't have gotten these books, and I still want the other ones. So it all works out, and they're not. It's not going to break the bank. We all understand we can all research into all of Israel Regardie's work and the Golden Dawn and how it's changed lives and the difference between a person's magic, personal magic, and group collective ritual magic, where you're in a established statist group with hierarchies and all that. I almost got through that whole stack. The last book on the list is probably the most important, or is equally important as the Golden Dawn. This is Chorea Apprentice by Josephine McCarthy. And so this text, this huge brick of a book, is for the magician in solitude, or kind of just getting around the group aspect, or the hierarchy aspect of the Golden Dawn, but ultimately has a lot of the same principles. So I am really excited to dig into that. It is not a one-time read. It is claimed that the course itself, just this one book, will take many years. It could take up to 17 years, or maybe at the quickest, maybe 4 to 5 years. And so her complete course online is free. And so there's 3 books. There's Chorea Apprentice, there's Chorea Initiate, and there's Chorea Adept. And so those 2 other books are even bigger than this one. I can't wait to get those one day as part of the collection. Pretty sure I'm just going to get them all because it's recommended to read everything and then go through the steps and go through the lessons and go through the tasks one by one, and they can take weeks and months and sometimes years, I guess, to complete. I have already started on the very beginning of her course, which starts with meditations. And what meditations are actually supposed to lead to, and then eventually, or right away, she actually starts getting into the tarot and the relevance of divination. So I look forward to really getting into that and taking it seriously, and not reaching past a certain point that I'm not supposed to reach past. But ultimately, everything I'm reading, I am finding the quickening. I am finding the ability to go through these steps very quickly, and it has me wondering, have I been doing this all this time and establishing myself along this already established spiritual path? And so my higher self is telling me, yeah, you got a lot of this going on already. Now you just need to put it into words and understand the ancient knowledge. And kind of like, roughly speaking, when all you're doing for the rest of your life is meditating, working in magic, and creating, there isn't really much left to do except for study, take it seriously, and keep to oneself, and help others along the way wherever it's necessary, wherever the fates, I guess you could say, in the spirit introduces a new challenge. You accept the challenge and you move forward. And so that brings me to my creation, in trying to bring some coherency and trying to bring out this hidden talent. I am creating a book. Now this book isn't like I was saying in the beginning, like ego based. So I'm a writer and I've got this talent. It's like, no, actually I'm not. I've never written a book. I used to have a talent writing, and I kind of still do, but it is sort of an unrealized talent, which hopefully we can realize together, and maybe even with your help. Maybe some good points will come in, resonate, and I can change my perspective, ever evolving, never thinking that I am decided or I know or conclusive on anything, but that it's a constantly changing thing. And I figured this channel, YouTube in general, is a perfect way to do this, or put out these sort of, I don't want to call them pretend, but these sort of publications where I don't necessarily have to take it so seriously, where I need this thing in a book form. Okay, I got books. but for the sake of ASMR and for the sake of someone being introduced to these principles and for the sake of artistic expression and creation, and in relative appreciation of such subjects, I've decided to create a book. Now, the title I have been playing with. Now, I think I might add an insert to this later on in the future. Everything's going to eventually change. But I have a kind of like a quick rough draft of an intro to this sort of book I'm writing. And for now, it has an evolving title, and there's an insert. So the title so far is True Power of the Quickening, Guide of Truth to Human Imagination and Devotion. And then the other insert or other title that I'm playing with is, which is a little bit more from the artistic archetypal expression, The Boy Who Broke the Light of the World, which is a story archetype with a mystical esoteric background that sort of that depicts a young boy, going into his mom's kitchen, realizing that the light bulb that sits above the center of the kitchen table in the center of the room is flickering, and so he gets out a stool and he props it up on the table, and there's other archetypes around him that is mentioned in this brief insert. And he goes up, and as he decides to because he realizes that all it needs is a quick clockwise turn, and that the light will be fixed. But when he does that, the light goes out, and it's completely black, and he has that instant feeling that he can't move, and that all he's able to do in his creative mind is call out to his mother in the darkness. So I'm playing with it, and it hasn't really been written yet, but it's so simple. It's impossible for me to forget it. It's completely channeled, and it's called The Boy Who Broke the Light of the World. Anyways, I get a little emotional when I think about it, because it's kind of like, I don't know, it sort of seeds down deep in an idea of the collective, the ion in our generation, which I'll probably get to some other day. But for now, True Power of the Quickening, here is the very rough draft of the preface I came up with. My perspective on the concept of awakening to one's own power has taken a new and transformative angle in the days since my so-called awakening. Perhaps there is a rogue thread woven somewhere by the subtle twists and turns of language being used, changed, and revered as holy throughout history, and to which we've become accustomed to seeing without noticing the change that starts to blossom and yet doesn't fully over the generations of change ever turning in the soupy threads of the collective consciousness. As for the same feeling of graduating beyond this term, you might have been scrying in your mind the collective unconscious, confusing the terminology even further by assuming a new and profound way of thinking about the way you were thinking before this profound new way of thinking revealed itself, starts a juxtaposition to the notion that there is no concept of rationally going up and down in status of awareness after learning one key concept along your journey. Your true power will always boil down to how extensively and consistently you expand your imagination and devotion, to which time and the frequency to operate in is only limited by your ability to expand within. Meaning your imagination and devotion are part of this practical yet seemingly magical set of metaphysical functions that operate this quantum time machine you have the ability to get more in tune with. And you can make some crazy shit happen, sort of. I wouldn't go putting extra skills down on your alchemical resume just yet, And the way I've initially described it here in the above is a tad on the colorful side of the entire truth. Truth itself, the eternal sus. Keep your quantum thinking caps on the entire time. Excuse me. Keep your quantum thinking caps on the entire way and understand that your imagination may seem like it's all the freedom you currently have left in the world, but trust me, even your imagination needs permission to be free on every level. Now, the language we can preface in itself by saying it's whatever you want it to be, i.e., imagination with devotion, imagination to devotion, devotion to imagination, etc., etc. You get the idea on language use, especially when you learn the concept of make it your own. Along the spiritual awakening path, we gain a strong sense and urgency towards what change will be in our benefit to activate more of the journey, and dare I add, with a strong, open sense of adventure. But I know what it feels like to be stuck waiting for life to catch up, however that resonates with you. You can even replace the word life with any word of your choosing. It will fit the same, like self or happiness, or a title that you dream to fit over your doorstep one day, figuratively or more so even. We all just so happen to be waiting for something to call out into existence and finally be able to say, hey, that's me, like magic. We all get stuck in the beginning when we'd rather proceed along the higher path, as if the higher path is a carrot to chase endlessly. Less noticeable when you first become activated for some, longer for others. Is the long-term effects this cycle of getting stuck echoes throughout the records of history in different arenas. It is very easy to do a little research and discover we did this all before. Many times, a wave in history awakens a select group of people throughout the world to take part in this awakening dream experience. And the wave echoes in our lifetimes. This wave in history depends on our own perceptual awareness to expand into, which we will get into later on. The main point to discover is that along the timeline we have recorded in history, we can pinpoint the exact language we were using when in fact a vast majority of the people were not only experiencing stressful times through hardship as we are today, but also amongst the decay and ashes of a labored world in the throes of drama. There too stand the batches of awakened souls heading forth into the more or less unknown world we now more or less debate as the realm of the supernatural. No, I don't need to be a scholar or historian or even the commercialized institutionalist symbol of success or a well-known squire of Western world academia. You may throw me into whatever category reflects the energy of the above-mentioned opinion and whatever grade, higher or lower, you think I should be placed in as I deliver this transmission. Expanding our understanding of how the environment, energies, and all of consciousness interacts with your imagination sits at the heart of every spiritual practice, magical practice, and modern means of working different manifestation techniques there is available in this day and age. But this cannot be realized unless clarification is made to the devotional aspect and how devotion is key to actually becoming a co-creator in your life. We all figure this out in our own way along the journey, and it is in the mind of the wise ones that all is just as well as letting life run its natural course to let the light of wisdom seed and germinate in its own time or place. Wait, aren't we living in the age of the quantum mind? Aren't we living in the age of the quickening? So, what went down 100 years ago, and how did things get so obviously confused as to not result in the reality one faces once they become of the awakened? Why didn't awakened individuals become mainstream in times of these seemingly similar labor pains of history? How did hard times related to spiritual growth not seed in the collective mainstream ideology when we can clearly see them today? The reality is that this new set of understanding and psychic skills not only isn't new evolution of information, but that the opportunity was clearly there to install direct information in those days, as well as the reality of today where our wise teachers carrying us gently out of our slumber fail to emphasize what we will eventually learn on our own. That along the path we realize both imagination and devotion are of a higher dimensional importance to growth from the ground up, and the path cannot be stabilized without either a teacher or a magical discipline. In ancient times, one could afford a teacher by simply exchanging a service for the education. Modern days, with all the wonderful conveniences, do not cater so kindly to the pupil in need, and even more so, it reflects urgently on the services needed most for personal spiritual growth. Today, people in general lack the valuable time and resources to make spiritual growth fast and effective, forcing teachers, authors, and the adepts to write short overviews and post self-help nonsense that leads the student nowhere. A degree of nonsense is, you know, to the opinion of the observer. The real solution has always been more involved, face to face, and with far less distraction. Let me say that again. The real solution has always been more involved, face to face, and with far less distraction. Not to mention the increase in artificial electromagnetic fields from all our devices causing increased anxiety. They didn't have that back then. In this same modern exchange, in this modern day, because we must go it alone due to separation, we still must wake up to the fact that going it alone might be where we are going wrong from the start. So how useful is a trend of wisdom that perpetuates a trend of solitude for the pupil and the needy? And how does a student expect to be reached by that wisdom when they need it most, while their preferred teacher is so far out of reach in proximity to that personal need? Money? Yep, it's money. Hang on, let me read that again. Hang on a second. Wait. Okay. And how does a student expect to be reached by that wisdom when they need it most, while their preferred teacher is so far out of reach in proximity to that personal need? Money? Yep, I think it's money. It's money. I think it's money that motivates, and to money we owe our hopes for salvation. How many times, energy exchange, I'll have to rewrite all that, but let me continue. How many times have you purchased a book giving energy to your aspired teacher, and you realize you wish this first book would have been a little thicker? After all, it looked worthwhile at first glance, and the connection to said author was so strong in resonance. Remember, this all happened 100 years ago. Try to keep up is the vibe these days as it was back then, but this piece isn't to dissuade you from your spiritual teacher or priest or your love for the world and word of alchemy. That kind of rhymed a little bit. If my work and my word is worth anything, it is to clarify with a quickness what potentially will be experienced by the average mind going through the alchemical process of conscious transformation into the higher order of creation. This process in the era of the this process in the era of quantum mechanics and ever-changing sources of knowledge is available to anyone at any point and through any walk of life and beyond the grips of any known struggle to achieve sovereignty. So my intention in this project is to break it down, organize, and clarify exactly what is being misunderstood about what awakening to one's own true power actually means in terms of the information being provided in sequence, and how that relates to what is laying out before us in real time in this day and age. I will also give firsthand account to exactly what one may experience internally along the awakened path. I'm going to try to do this without pretending to be some kind of expert, so this work is dedicated to be free for anyone. Of course, and ongoing. Of course, this novice writer who can barely spell doesn't require virtue status of being correct in all points or even a conclusive reference on where to land speculations, especially if someone has already beat me to the punchline, or finish line rather. In any case, this book would just have to be an extensive launching point to no end, and to no end to my enjoyment, since all throughout history and up to this point, writers of all kinds prove the only cure for insecurities in writer's block has been a trusty bottle of whiskey and throwing one's own book against the wall. For some folks, rightfully off-putting expressions from Mars energy influences, or perhaps my favorite, frozen willpower, from whatever it may spring out of. And to no end, there is still something wrong here, and I don't think it's the collective writer's block. Lucky for me, I live in an age where I can disregard the old paradigms of the commercialized imagination and expand at my free will, making my words, and to whomever they seem important, available for all to experience, thus living out a partial purpose of inspiring others to do the same. To this extent, in my imagination and devotion to that nagging, overwhelming purpose, I extend myself, and with great ease. So that is the very beginning and very first rough draft of this work that I am working on. And I also started working on like a chapter. I don't know if I would describe it as the first chapter, but it has something to do with the Aeon, and this is completely channeled, obviously, because I don't necessarily have a firm grasp on what the Aeon is, but apparently my spiritual team has channeled it through from the higher order, that talking about and understanding what the Aeon actually is very relative to understanding what information was being distributed and why we missed it 100 years ago. And then again, when the Blu-ray star seeds, which will be another chapter, come into play in the 80s or 70s and 80s, and up to this point where we have now changed over into the quantum mind, and how all this information stacks on itself and is relative to certain, I guess you can call it, the Fibonacci sequence of events that has bullet pointed history over the last 100 years, and there's more. It's extensive, and then all these books cover kind of a portion of all of that Aeon, and its relevance. And so I'll get to understand that more. You can participate all you'd like in the comments section. Let me know what I'm missing, what you'd like to see in this book, in this work, what you'd like to talk about, or any subjects that stand out that you don't get, you don't understand, or even any corrections you kind of like were thinking that maybe need to be inserted. Let me know. And because this is going to be something that is completely ego-free, completely intermodable, changeable, and can be flipped on its end at any point. And I look forward to reading the literature that breaks through into discovering more about what exactly the resonance of this information, or what exactly is being channeled through when we are are gathering together the resonance of this information coming out in this aeon. Keeping in mind that it is relative to not only myself, but to the viewer in this quantum age. Give me a thumbs up if you understand what I'm talking about in a vague sense. And leave a comment down below if you don't. But let's see, what do I want to leave off on? I want to leave off on sorry for all the distractions. It's what it is when information comes through. There are stress points, and hopefully eventually I will find myself in a more peaceful, more soundproof environment where it is more controlled and less chaos gets through to distract the ego mind from detaching from the relevant information trying to be delivered, being transmitted. That's what we deal in this raw spirituality, this raw sequence of events leading up to our ultimate growth. Maybe I should just end there because it's like all I hear is the distractions, and all I kind of like get is this feeling that I can't grasp the landing point of this video, or as if I'm looking around at my books trying to find out what exactly it's going to be. But ultimately, I wanted to get this all on video collected so that I can move on to the next point, which is diving into these books, seeing what else needs to be clarified and integrated, and that way I have something to talk about. That way it's not so vague, and I can collect myself and become more relevant, to what's going on in your own perspective, your own life, and the random potential subscriber that might go ahead and click on the button. All right. Anyways, enough YouTube innuendos. You guys have a great one. Thanks for being a part of this creation with me, and I'll catch you later.